Glass exploded across white marble. Blood pooled beneath the crystal chandelier. Claire Bennett's vision blurred as strong hands lifted her broken body. 30 seconds earlier, she'd been holding a water pitcher. Now she couldn't feel her legs. The three men in expensive suits stood frozen. Their fists were still clenched. The elderly woman they'd been attacking knelt beside Claire. Her wrinkled hands pressed against Claire's bleeding face. Her eyes stayed calm. Too calm for what had just happened. Claire's mind fought to stay conscious. She was 34 years old, a single mother, a waitress trying to survive in a city that ate people like her alive. 3 years ago, she'd been a trauma nurse saving lives at Mount Sinai. One violent patient, one moment of bad luck. Everything she'd built had shattered, just like the glass around her now. She'd rebuilt from nothing. She served entitled billionaires their steaks and swallowed her pride because her 9-year-old daughter needed food, needed a home, needed a mother who didn't give up. The paramedics shouted medical terms Claire still understood. The elderly woman leaned close, whispered something Claire couldn't hear. Then darkness pulled her under. What Claire didn't know was that this stranger's calm wasn't shock. It was recognition. And in 8 hours, when Claire finally opened her eyes, nothing about her life would ever be the same again. But first, she had to survive the night. Your support means everything to this channel. Subscribe now so we can keep sharing stories of everyday courage that changes everything. Let's begin. 6 hours before the glass shattered, Claire Bennett's alarm screamed at 4:30 in the morning. Her studio apartment in Washington Heights was dark, cold. The radiator had stopped working 2 weeks ago. Her landlord still hadn't fixed it. She pulled herself out of bed. Her lower back ached. It always ached now. 3 years of standing on restaurant floors. 3 years since everything fell apart. She moved through her morning routine like a machine. Shower, huff it, kiss Nora's sleeping forehead. Her daughter looked peaceful under the worn comforter. 9 years old, too young to remember when they'd lived in a real apartment. When Claire had worn scrubs instead of a black server's uniform. When she'd saved lives instead of serving overpriced steaks to people who barely looked at her. The subway ride to Midtown took 45 minutes. Claire spent it reviewing menu specials on her phone. The Meridian Club changed their offerings every week. Seared scallops with truffle reduction. Wagyu beef Wellington. Wine pairings she'd never be able to afford. She memorized every detail, every ingredient, every price point. Because wealthy customers ask questions. And if she couldn't answer, her tip suffered. She clocked in at 6:15. The morning shift at the Meridian Club started with setup. Claire rolled silverware into crisp white napkins. She polished wine glasses until they gleamed under the crystal chandeliers. She checked her station, restocked condiments, refilled salt and pepper shakers, made sure everything was perfect. "You're early again." Jamal appeared beside her with a tray of clean plates. He was 23, studying computer science at City College, working doubles to pay tuition. "You know Marcus doesn't pay us for setup time." "I know." Claire finished the last napkin roll. Her hands moved fast, efficient. The same hands that had once inserted for lines and sutured wounds now folded fabric. "You okay?" Jamal studied her face. "You look tired." "I'm always tired." She managed a smile. It felt fake. Everything felt fake lately. The lunch rush started at 11:30. Claire moved between tables like water, greeting guests, taking orders, delivering food with perfect timing, refilling water glasses before they emptied, anticipating needs before customers voiced them. It was choreography. She'd learned every step, every gesture, every phrase that maximized tips. "Can I get you anything else, sir? How would you like that cooked, ma'am?" "Excellent choice. That's one of our most popular dishes." Smile, nod, disappear, repeat. Her break came at 2:30. 15 minutes. Claire sat in the staff locker room and FaceTimed Nora. Her daughter answered from their neighbor's apartment. Mrs. Chun watched her after school for $20 a day. "Hi, baby. How was school?" "Good. I got an A on my spelling test." Nora's face filled the screen. Gap-toothed smile. Eyes that looked exactly like Claire's. "That's my girl. So proud of you. When are you coming home?" "Late, honey. I have the dinner shift too." But I'll see you tomorrow morning before school. I promise. Nora's smile faded. Okay. The call ended. Claire's chest tightened. Guilt pressed down on her like a physical weight. She worked 60-hour weeks. Nora spent more time with Mrs. Chun than with her own mother. But what choice did she have? Bills didn't pay themselves. Medical debt didn't disappear. She opened her locker to grab pain medication. That's when she saw it, tucked behind her spare uniform. Her old Mount Sinai Hospital ID badge. Claire Bennett, RN. Trauma unit. The photo showed a different woman. Younger, hopeful. Someone who believed hard work mattered. She'd kept the badge hidden for 3 years. Couldn't throw it away. Couldn't look at it either. It reminded her of everything she'd lost. The career she'd built through nursing school and 12-hour shifts and endless studying. Gone in one violent moment. One patient with psychosis. One punch that shattered 3 vertebrae and ended everything. Claire shoved the badge deeper into her locker. Slammed it shut. She had 4 hours left in her shift. No time for ghosts. Margaret Ashford arrived at 7:15. Claire noticed her immediately. The woman moved differently than typical Meridian Club customers. No designer labels screaming wealth. No entourage. No phone pressed to her ear like a permanent accessory. Just quiet elegance. Gray hair pulled into a simple bun. Navy dress that looked expensive but understated. She carried herself like someone who had nothing to prove. Marcus, the floor manager, seated her at table 12. Claire's section. Good evening, ma'am. Welcome to the Meridian Club. Claire set down a water glass. Can I start you with something to drink? Margaret looked up. Her eyes were sharp, intelligent. They studied Claire's face for a moment too long. What do you recommend? The sommelier suggests the 2019 Bordeaux tonight. It pairs beautifully with the beef Wellington. You've tried it? Margaret's voice carried genuine curiosity. Claire's smile stayed professional. On my salary? No, ma'am. But I've memorized every tasting note. Something flickered in Margaret's expression, almost like recognition. I'll have the Bordeaux, and I'll trust your judgment on dinner. Excellent choice. Claire took the menu. As she walked away, she felt Margaret's eyes following her. It made her uncomfortable. Wealthy people usually look through servers, not at them. The evening shift moved fast. The dining room filled with Manhattan's elite, hedge fund managers, Broadway producers, real estate developers. Claire navigated between tables with practiced grace. She delivered meals, split checks, smiled until her face hurt. Then they arrived. Table 15. 3 men in expensive suits, late 30s, loud voices, already drunk before they sat down. Claire recognized the type immediately. Wall Street traders celebrating a big win. They'd order top-shelf liquor, run up a massive bill, tip poorly, make inappropriate comments. She was right on all counts. Scotch, Macallan 25. The leader, Chad Brennan, according to his credit card, didn't look at her and keep them coming. For 90 minutes, Claire refilled their glasses, ignored their wandering eyes, deflected their crude jokes with professional courtesy. This was part of the job, the part they didn't mention in training, the part she'd learned to survive through silence. But then Chad noticed Margaret, dining alone, reading a book between courses, not paying attention to anyone. Hey. Chad's voice carried across the dining room. Old lady at table 12. What are you reading? How to spend your dead husband's money. Margaret didn't look up, didn't react. Chad pushed back his chair, stood. His friends laughed, encouraged him. Claire's pulse quickened. She'd seen this before. Drunk men. Power without consequences. Someone vulnerable nearby. She moved toward table 15. Sir, can I get you anything else? Yeah. Tell Grandma over there to smile more. Makes her less ugly. Margaret finally looked up. Her expression stayed calm. But Claire saw something flash in her eyes. Not fear. Disappointment. Like she'd watched this same scene play out for decades. Chad walked toward table 12. His friends followed. Claire's training kicked in. De-escalation protocol. Keep voice steady. Create physical barrier. Redirect attention. Gentlemen, the bar just received a new shipment of... Move. Chad pushed past her. Stood over Margaret's table. I'm talking to you. You deaf or just rude? Margaret set down her book. looked at him with those sharp eyes. I heard you, young man. I simply didn't think your comment deserved a response. Chad's face flushed. You think you're better than me? I think you're drunk, and I think you should return to your table. He grabbed her water glass, threw it. Water splashed across Margaret's dress. The dining room went silent. Every customer watching. No one moving. Claire scanned for Marcus. He stood by the kitchen door, frozen, calculating. 3 drunk men meant 3 big bills. 1 elderly woman meant 1 check already paid. The math was simple. Management always protected profit. Apologize. Chad leaned closer to Margaret. Or I'll give you something real to complain about. That's when Claire moved. She didn't think, didn't calculate consequences. She just moved. Her body remembered what her mind tried to forget. Trauma nurse training. How to position yourself between danger and patient. How to use your voice as a weapon. Step back. Now, Claire's voice came out different. Not the servile waitress tone. The ER nurse voice. The one that commanded. The one that made people listen. Chad turned. What did you say to me? I said step back. Leave her alone. Or what? He stepped closer. His breath smelled like expensive scotch and entitlement. Claire held her ground. Or I'll make you. His laugh was ugly. You'll make me? You're a waitress. I'm asking you to leave. Final warning. Chad moved fast. Grabbed Claire's arm. Twisted it. Pain shot through her shoulder. But muscle memory took over. She trained for violent patience. Knew how to break holds. How to create distance. She twisted. Pulled free. Pushed him back. That's when his friends joined in. 3 against 1. Claire's back hit Margaret's table. Plates shattered. She fought back. Used everything she remembered. But she was smaller. Outnumbered. The first punch caught her jaw. The second, her ribs. The third knocked her to the floor. Through blurred vision, she saw Margaret stand. Saw the old woman try to help. Saw Chad push Margaret down. That made Claire move again. Bleeding. Dizzy. She pulled herself up. Threw herself between Margaret and the men one more time. Don't touch her. The next punch shattered everything. Glass. Bones. The fragile life Claire had built. She hit the marble floor. Tasted blood. Heard screaming. Felt hands. Gentle hands. Press against her face. It's okay. You're okay. Margaret's voice. Calm. Like she'd done this before. Help is coming. Claire tried to speak. Couldn't. Her vision darkened at the edges. She saw Marcus finally running over. Saw other servers pulling out their phones. Saw Chad and his friends backing away. Realizing what they'd done. Realizing cameras had caught everything. Margaret leaned close. Whispered something Claire couldn't quite hear. Something about searching. About waiting. About finding the right person. Then the darkness pulled her under. The last thing she saw was Margaret's eyes. Still calm. Still watching. Like she'd just discovered something precious she'd thought was lost forever. Claire woke to softness. That was wrong. Her apartment mattress felt like concrete. Had felt like concrete since she'd bought it used 3 years ago. This felt like clouds. Like luxury. Like somewhere she didn't belong. Her eyes opened slowly. White ceiling. Crown molding. Recessed lighting. Not her ceiling. She tried to sit up. Pain exploded through her ribs. Her jaw. Her left shoulder. Everything hurt. Don't move yet. A voice. Female. Professional. A nurse appeared beside her bed. Young. Maybe 25. She wore navy scrubs. You have 3 fractured ribs. Severe concussion. Dislocated shoulder. We reset. You need to stay still. Where? Claire's voice came out cracked. Raw. Mount Sinai Hospital. Private wing. You've been here 8 hours. Private wing. Claire's stomach dropped. She couldn't afford this. Could barely afford the community clinic. Her insurance, what little she had, wouldn't cover a private room at Manhattan's most expensive hospital. I don't have money for her. Already handled. The woman you protected took care of everything. The nurse adjusted Claire's for. She's been asking about you every hour. Wanted to know the moment you woke. Margaret. The name came back slowly. The restaurant. The fight. The way Margaret's eyes had stayed calm while everything shattered. Claire looked around the room. It looked like a hotel suite, not a hospital. Leather furniture. Original artwork. Floor-to-ceiling windows showing the Manhattan skyline. This room probably cost thousands per night. I need to leave. Panic rose in Claire's chest. I can't afford this. I need to. Ms. Bennett. The nurse's voice turned firm. You have a severe concussion. 3 broken ribs. If you leave, you risk puncturing a lung. You're not going anywhere for at least 48 hours. 48 hours. 2 days of work missed. 2 days without pay. Mrs. Chin charging $40 she didn't have. Nora staying with neighbors while her mother recovered in luxury Claire couldn't afford. My daughter. I need to call. Already done. Mrs. Ashford contacted your emergency contact. Your daughter is staying with the Mrs. Chin. She's been informed you're safe. Mrs. Ashford. So that was Margaret's name. Claire closed her eyes. Tried to process everything. Failed. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. The door opened. Margaret entered. She moved slowly, carefully. She wore a hospital gown under a silk robe, and 4-pole followed her. She looked older now. Tired. Sick. You're awake. Margaret's face transformed. Relief. Genuine relief. I was worried. You're hurt. Claire noticed the bandages. The bruising. Did they? I'm fine. A few bruises. Nothing compared to what you endured. Margaret settled into the chair beside Claire's bed. That was very foolish what you did. Very brave, but very foolish. You were in trouble. Claire's voice stayed flat. Matter of fact, I couldn't just watch. Most people can. Most people did. Margaret studied her face. Why didn't you? Claire thought about the question. About the real answer. I used to be a nurse. Trauma unit. You learn to move toward danger, not away from it. Can't seem to unlearn that. Used to be. 3 years ago, patient with psychosis. Attacked me during a transfer. Broke my back. Couldn't do the work anymore. The words came out mechanical. Claire had said them so many times they'd lost meaning. Margaret's expression shifted. Understanding. Maybe pain. So you rebuilt. Became a server. Had to eat. Had a daughter to feed. How old? 9. Something flickered across Margaret's face. There, and gone too fast to identify. What's her name? Nora. Silence filled the room. Not uncomfortable. Just heavy. Like Margaret was processing information. Making calculations Claire couldn't see. The restaurant fired you. Margaret's voice turned cold. Marcus called an hour ago. Said you violated their workplace violence policy. Created a hostile environment for paying customers. Claire's chest tightened. Not surprise. She'd expected this. But hearing it still hurt. Of course he did. I'm sorry. Not your fault. Claire stared at the ceiling. It's how it works. Wealthy customers matter. Servers don't. That's unacceptable. That's reality. More silence. Margaret shifted. Winced. Claire's nurse training kicked in automatically. You're in pain. Have they given you anything? I'm fine. You're not fine. Your breathing is shallow. You're favoring your left side. Claire stopped. Remembered she wasn't a nurse anymore. Had no right to assess patients. Not my place. Don't apologize. Margaret's voice turned gentle. I have pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. 6 months left. Maybe less. The pain is constant. The words hit like physical blows. Claire looked at Margaret. Really looked. Saw the yellow tint to her skin. The thinness. The way she moved, like everything hurt. How had you missed it? I'm sorry. The words felt inadequate. Oh, don't be. I've had a long life. A successful one. I made my peace with death months ago. Margaret's expression turned distant. What I haven't made peace with is dying alone. Without purpose. Without making things right. Before Claire could respond, chaos erupted outside her door. Voices. Arguing. The young nurse who'd been monitoring Claire rushed in, face flushed. Mrs. Ashford, I'm sorry. They insisted. 2 people pushed past her. A man and a woman. Both dressed in expensive business attire. Both radiating fury. Mother. The man's voice dripped with false concern. What are you doing out of bed? You should be resting. Margaret's expression went blank. Cold. Preston, I didn't realize you were in the city. Of course I'm in the city. My mother is hospitalized. I got on the first flight from Boston. Preston's eyes moved to Claire. Dismissed her. Focus back on Margaret. You've had everyone worried. The doctors said you refused to return to your room. I wanted to check on the woman who saved my life. The woman who caused a scene at a restaurant and nearly got you killed. The woman Preston's wife, Claire guessed, stepped forward. Really, Margaret, your judgment lately has been concerning. Vivian, how lovely to see you. Margaret's voice stayed pleasant. Her eyes stayed ice. I wasn't aware my judgment required your approval. Given your diagnosis. My diagnosis doesn't affect my mind. The doctors disagree. Preston pulled out his phone, showed Margaret a document. They've expressed concerns about your decision-making capacity. The medication you're on can cause confusion, impaired judgment. Claire watched the exchange, understood immediately what was happening. She'd seen this in the hospital. Family members circling dying patients, looking for weaknesses, waiting for opportunities. I see. Margaret's voice didn't change, but her hands tightened on her four-pole. You're suggesting what exactly? That you need help. That you need someone to manage your affairs until you're feeling better. Someone meaning you. I'm your son, your only family. Who else would? Get out. Margaret's voice cut like a blade. Both of you. Now. Preston's mask slipped, showed something ugly underneath. You can't kick us out. We have a right to. You have no rights here. This is my room, my hospital stay, my life, and I'm telling you to leave. We're not leaving until... A new voice interrupted. Actually, you are. A man entered. Asian, 40s, expensive suit. He carried himself like someone used to authority. He nodded to Margaret, ignored Preston and Vivian. Samuel, thank you for coming. Margaret's relief was visible. Of course. Samuel turned to Preston. I'm Samuel Chun, Mrs. Ashford's attorney. She's asked you to leave. If you refuse, I'll have security remove you. Preston's face flushed. She's my mother. You can't. I absolutely can, and will. You have 10 seconds. For a moment, Preston looked ready to fight. Then he turned to Margaret. His expression shifted, became something calculated. Fine, we'll go. But this conversation isn't over, Mother. We need to discuss your care, your competency, your estate. My estate is none of your concern. You're dying. It's absolutely my concern. I won't let some stranger, he glanced at Claire, manipulate you in your final months. Then he left. Vivian followed. The door closed. Silence filled the room, heavy, thick with implications. Margaret sank into her chair, suddenly looked exhausted. Samuel moved to her side. Are you all right? I'm tired, Samuel. So tired. She looked at Claire. I apologize. You shouldn't have witnessed that. It's okay. Claire understood family dysfunction, had plenty of her own. Samuel pulled out a tablet. I ran the background check you requested on Claire Bennett. Claire's stomach dropped. Background check. Forgive me. Margaret didn't look apologetic. I needed to know who you were, what you've survived. Samuel read from screen. Claire Marie Bennett, 34, former registered nurse at Mount Sinai Hospital. Trauma unit. Exemplary record for 6 years. Injured on duty 3 years ago. Forced medical retirement. Single mother to Nora Bennett, age 9. Custody battle with ex-husband Robert Bennett 2 years ago. You won. He terminated parental rights rather than pay child support. Each word felt like exposure. Claire's life laid bare for strangers. Samuel continued. Current employment, former employment at the Meridian Club. 3 years. Perfect attendance. No complaints. Minimal sick days despite documented chronic pain. He looked up. You're exactly what Mrs. Ashford hoped you'd be. I don't understand. Claire looked between them. Why are you investigating me? Margaret leaned forward. Because I need help. Real help. Not from my son, who wants my money. Not from nurses who see me as a paycheck. From someone who understands what it means to fight, to survive, to protect people who can't protect themselves. She paused. I saw how you moved tonight. The way you assessed danger, positioned your body, used your voice. That wasn't a waitress reacting. That was a trained professional who never stopped being one. Claire's throat tightened. I'm not a nurse anymore. You'll always be a nurse. The same way I'll always be someone who built something from nothing. Margaret's voice turned urgent. I'm dying, Claire, and my son is circling like a vulture. I need someone I can trust. Someone who understands stakes. Someone who won't betray me. You don't know me. We just met. I know you took a beating for a stranger. I know you lost your career protecting someone else. I know you rebuild instead of breaking. Margaret pulled out her phone, showed Claire a photo. A young woman, late 20s, dark hair, green eyes. She looked like Claire, eerily like Claire, my daughter, Caroline. She died 20 years ago. Drug overdose. She was 29. Margaret's voice cracked. I failed her, worked too hard, missed too many signs, lost her before I understood what mattered. Claire stared at the photo, understood now. The way Margaret had looked at her, the recognition. She was a ghost, a replacement, a second chance Margaret didn't deserve but desperately wanted. I can't replace your daughter. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking for your help. 6 months of your time, maybe less. I'll pay you $15,000 a week. Cover all expenses. Make sure Nora has everything she needs. Private school, healthcare, security. And when I'm gone, Margaret paused, I'll make sure you're taken care of, that you'll never have to serve another table or swallow another insult. $15,000 a week. Claire's mind calculated automatically. $60,000 a month. If Margaret lived 6 months, that was $360,000. More money than Claire had made in her entire life. What would I have to do? Be my companion. Help me navigate the medical system. Protect me from Preston. Be there when the pain gets too bad. Help me die with dignity instead of alone in some hospital bed while my son fights over my assets. It was too much, too fast. Claire's head pounded. Her ribs ached. She needed to think. Couldn't think. I need time too. We don't have time. Samuel's voice cut in. Preston filed emergency conservatorship papers an hour ago. Claims Mrs. Ashford is mentally incompetent. The hearing is in 5 days. If he wins, he controls everything. Her medical care, her estate, her final months. Margaret met Claire's eyes. I'm not asking you to love me or forgive me for using you as a second chance. I'm asking you to help me fight. That's what you do, isn't it? Fight for people who need it. Claire thought about Nora, about their studio apartment, about serving entitled customers for minimum wage plus tips, about the nursing badge hidden in her locker that reminded her of who she used to be. She thought about Margaret, dying alone, manipulated by family who saw dollar signs instead of a human being. Your support keeps this channel going. Like this video and subscribe if you believe in standing up for those who can't fight alone. We'll be back with more stories that matter. Claire took a breath, made her choice. Okay, I'll help you. Margaret's relief was immediate, visible. Thank you. But I have conditions. Claire's voice turned firm. Nora comes first. Always. Any decisions affecting her, I make. You want me to fight for you? Fine. But I won't sacrifice my daughter for anyone. Agreed. And when this is over, when you're gone, I don't want your guilt money. I want a recommendation, a reference, a way back into nursing. That's what I really lost. That's what I want back. Margaret smiled. Real. Genuine. Samuel, make note. Upon my death, Claire Bennett receives not only her salary, but a fully funded return to nursing program. Tuition, living expenses, whatever she needs. Samuel typed into his tablet. Done. Claire closed her eyes, wondered what she'd just agreed to, wondered if she'd regret it, wondered if 6 months with a dying stranger could somehow fix what 3 years of survival had broken. She'd find out soon enough. Margaret's Fifth Avenue penthouse occupied the entire 42nd floor. Claire stood in the marble foyer and forgot how to breathe. 14-foot ceilings soared above her head. Crystal chandeliers cast fractured light across imported Italian marble floors. Floor-to-ceiling windows stretched the length of the living room, showing Central Park spread out like a green carpet below. This wasn't an apartment. This was a museum, a palace, a world Claire had never imagined existing outside of movies. It's too much. Claire's voice came out small. I can't. You can. Margaret moved past her slowly. The discharge from Mount Sinai had exhausted her, but she'd insisted on bringing Claire home immediately. You'll have the guest wing, 3 bedrooms, your own bathroom, Office space. Nora can have whichever room she wants. 3 bedrooms. Claire's entire studio apartment could fit in the foyer. An older woman appeared from a side hallway. Latina. Early 70s. She wore simple clothes, but carried herself with quiet authority. Her dark eyes assessed Claire with the kind of scrutiny that came from decades of reading people. Rosa, this is Claire Bennett. She'll be staying with us. Margaret's voice turned gentle, affectionate. Claire, this is Rosa Morales. My housekeeper. My friend. The person who's kept me alive for the past 30 years. 28 years. Rosa's voice carried a thick accent. And you make it very difficult sometimes. I know. Margaret smiled. Actually smiled. It transformed her face. Made her look younger. Less tired. Rosa turned to Claire. Extended her hand. Welcome. Any enemy of Preston is a friend of mine. Claire shook her hand. Rosa's grip was strong. Calloused. Working hands. Like Claire's own. Let me show you to your rooms. Rosa led Claire down a hallway lined with original artwork. Paintings Claire recognized from museum visits. Names she couldn't afford to whisper. Margaret told me about your daughter. I prepared the blue bedroom for her. It has the best morning light. Children need morning light. The guest wing opened into a sitting area larger than most apartments. 3 doors led to separate bedrooms, each one decorated like something from a luxury hotel. The bathroom featured marble everything. A tub big enough to swim in. Heated floors. A shower with 6 different heads. This is... Claire couldn't find words. Too much. I know. Rosa's expression softened. I felt the same way when I first came here. Margaret's husband had just died. She was 35 years old, newly widowed, running his real estate empire alone. Everyone expected her to fail, to sell everything, to disappear. But she didn't. No, she built. She fought. She turned 5 properties into 500. Rosa moved to the window, looked out at the skyline. She also lost herself, worked 80-hour weeks, missed her daughter's childhood, missed the signs that Caroline was struggling. By the time she noticed, it was too late. Claire thought about Nora, about the hours she spent away, about Mrs. Chun raising her daughter more than she did. Caroline overdosed 20 years ago. Rosa's voice turned heavy. Heroin. She was 29 years old. Margaret found her in her apartment downtown. She'd been dead for 2 days before anyone noticed. The words hit like fists. Claire had seen overdoses in the ER, had performed CPR on bodies already cold, had watched families shatter when they arrived too late. Margaret blamed herself. Rosa turned back to Claire. Still blames herself. That's why she works so hard now. Why she can't stop. If she stops, she has to think, to remember, to feel. Why are you telling me this? Because you look like Caroline. You move like her. You have her eyes. Rosa's gaze turned sharp. And I need you to understand, Margaret isn't rescuing you. You're rescuing her. She's been searching for this. For someone to forgive. Someone to save. Someone to make up for all the ways she failed her own daughter. Claire's chest tightened. I'm not a replacement. I know. And you need to make sure Margaret knows. Because if you don't, if you let her project Caroline onto you, it will destroy both of you when she dies. Silence filled the room. Heavy. Honest. Claire appreciated it. She'd had enough of lies, of people pretending things were simple when they never were. I'll be clear with her. Claire met Rosa's eyes. I'm here to help, not to be someone I'm not. Good. Rosa moved toward the door. Dinner is at 7. Margaret eats in the dining room. Formal. She insists on maintaining routines. Says it keeps her human. Should I dress? Come as you are. Margaret may like formality, but she values authenticity more. Rosa left. Claire stood alone in luxury she couldn't process. She pulled out her phone, called Mrs. Chun, arranged for Nora to stay one more night. Then she sat on the edge of a bed that cost more than 3 months of her old rent and tried not to cry. She'd made a choice. Accepted Margaret's offer. $15,000 a week. 6 months of proximity to death and wealth and complicated grief. She'd done it for Nora, for their future, for a chance to reclaim the life she'd lost. But sitting in that guest room, surrounded by marble and silk and views of Manhattan that most people would never see, Claire felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. Terror. Not a failure. She'd already failed. Lost her career. Lost her dignity. Rebuilt from nothing. Terror that she might actually succeed. That she might save Margaret. That she might earn enough money to change Nora's life. That she might prove she was more than a waitress who'd given up. And if she succeeded, if she did everything right, Margaret would still die, would still leave, would still abandon her the way everyone eventually did. Claire lay back on sheets that felt like clouds, stared at the ceiling, let the tears come quietly, let herself mourn the simplicity of serving tables and going home and not mattering to anyone except her daughter. That life had been hard, exhausting, undignified, but it had been safe. This, whatever this was, felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing the fall would either destroy her or teach her to fly. She just wasn't sure which one scared her more. The conservatorship hearing was in 3 days. Preston had filed paperwork claiming Margaret suffered from dementia, depression, and impaired judgment. He'd hired 3 doctors willing to testify, 2 private investigators gathering dirt, 1 publicist planting stories about Claire being a con artist targeting vulnerable elderly women. Samuel Chin spread the documents across Margaret's dining room table. They're moving fast, trying to overwhelm us before we can respond. Claire read through the filing. Her hands shook. Preston had included her name 23 times. Each mention painted her as a manipulator, a predator, a woman using Margaret's illness for financial gain. He's terrified. Margaret's voice stayed calm. She sat at the head of the table, barely touching her breakfast. The cancer was winning. She'd lost weight. Her skin had yellowed. She slept 16 hours a day now. I told him yesterday I was changing my will. He knows he's losing control. Can he actually win this? Claire couldn't believe she was asking. Couldn't believe they were sitting in a penthouse discussing whether Margaret's son could legally steal her autonomy. Maybe. Samuel didn't sugarcoat. The burden of proof is low for emergency conservatorship. If the judge believes Margaret is in immediate danger, financially or medically, they can grant temporary control to Preston while we fight. I'm dying, not incompetent. Margaret's voice turned steel. I've built and managed a billion-dollar real estate portfolio. I've negotiated with mayors and billionaires and mob bosses. But suddenly, because I hired a companion my son doesn't approve of, I'm mentally unfit. That's exactly what he'll argue. Samuel pulled out another document. He's also questioning your medication. Claims the pain management drugs cause confusion, hallucinations, impaired decision-making. Claire's nurse training kicked in. What medications are you taking? Margaret listed them. Oxycontin, morphine patches, anti-nausea medication, anti-anxiety medication, sleep aids, a pharmacy's worth of controlled substances keeping her comfortable enough to function. Those dosages are high. Claire's mind calculated, but appropriate for stage 4 pancreatic cancer. You should be monitored. But there's nothing unusual about. She stopped, looked at Margaret, really looked. When did you start having balance problems? 2 weeks ago. Why? And the confusion? The memory gaps? I'm dying, Claire. I assumed. Those aren't symptoms of your cancer. Claire stood, moved to Margaret's medication organizer, opened it, examined each bottle carefully. Your morphine patches. When did you start using this brand? Preston's assistant brought them last week. Said my pharmacy was out of my usual brand. This was equivalent. Claire's blood went cold. She held up the bottle, examined the label, the dosage, the manufacturer. This isn't equivalent. This is triple strength. You've been getting 3 times your prescribed morphine dose for 2 weeks. Silence crashed through the room. Samuel stood. Rosa appeared from the kitchen. Are you certain? Samuel's voice turned dangerous. I'm certain. Claire pulled out her phone, Googled the drug code, showed them the results. This medication is prescribed for end-of-life care. Terminal patients, people who need sedation, not management, sedation. Margaret's face went white. Preston did this. He's trying to make you appear incompetent. Claire finished. Get you so drugged you can't function, can't think clearly. So when he takes you to court, you'll seem exactly like someone who needs a conservator. He's poisoning me. Margaret's voice broke. My own son is poisoning me. Rosa crossed herself. Dios mío. Samuel grabbed his phone. I'm calling the police. This is attempted murder. Elder abuse. We can... No. Margaret's voice cut through. Sharp. Clear. We can't prove Preston knew. His assistant brought the medication. Preston can claim ignorance. Say it was a pharmacy error. A miscommunication. But we can use this. Margaret's eyes locked on Claire. You just saved my life. You recognized what 3 doctors missed. You demonstrated the exact competency Preston claims I lack by hiring you. She turned to Samuel. Document everything. Get the original prescription, the substitute medication, Claire's nursing credentials. We present this at the hearing. Preston will say she's lying, that she manufactured this to discredit him. Then we get the medications tested, independently verified. Margaret's strength was returning, clarity replacing confusion, and we make sure everyone knows that Claire Bennett, the waitress Preston tried to paint as a con artist, is actually a registered trauma nurse who saved her employer from accidental overdose. Claire's mind raced. If we switch you back to the correct dosage, now how long until the confusion clears? 48 hours, maybe less. Then we have time. Claire started organizing medications, separating correct from incorrect. We get you clean, we get you sharp, and in 3 days you walk into that courtroom and prove you're more competent than Preston will ever be. Samuel nodded, started taking photos, documenting everything, building a case that would bury Preston's attempt. Rosa moved to Margaret's side, took her hand. You should rest. Let Claire handle your medications from now on. Agreed. Margaret squeezed Rosa's hand, looked at Claire. I owe you my life. You don't owe me anything. This is a job. But Claire's voice shook, because it wasn't just a job. Not anymore. Somewhere between the hospital and the penthouse and this moment, it had become personal. She'd stopped seeing Margaret as a wealthy stranger offering money, started seeing her as a patient, someone vulnerable, someone who needed protection from people who should have loved her. Someone like Nora would become if Claire ever failed to protect her. The next 2 days blurred together. Claire monitored Margaret's medication personally, watched her symptoms improve. Clarity returned. Strength rebuilt. The confusion lifted like fog burning off in sunlight. On the second evening, Claire brought Nora to the penthouse. Her daughter stood in the foyer the way Claire had, eyes wide, voice small. Mama, is this real? It's real, baby. Claire knelt down, held Nora's hands. This is Margaret. She's my friend. She's sick. I'm helping take care of her. And she said you can stay here with us. Nora looked at Margaret. Margaret looked back, and something passed between them. Recognition. Not the way Margaret had looked at Claire, seeing ghosts. This was different. This was Margaret seeing a child, a real child, present and alive and needing safety. Hello, Nora. Margaret's voice turned gentle. Your mother is very brave. Did you know that? She got hurt protecting you. Nora's voice came out protective, fierce. She came home with bruises. I know. I was there. She saved my life. Margaret moved closer, slowly, carefully. Would you like to see your room? It has a window facing Central Park. You can see the whole zoo from there. Nora's eyes lit up. Really? Really? Claire watched Margaret lead her daughter toward the guest wing. Watch them talk. Softly. Watch something broken in Margaret start healing. Not replacing Caroline. Not pretending. Just connecting. With a child who needed stability. With innocence that still believed in goodness. That night, after Nora fell asleep in the blue bedroom with morning light, Margaret called Samuel. Change my will. I want it finalized before the hearing. What changes? Margaret looked at Claire. Everything. I'm leaving everything to people who chose to care when they didn't have to. Make sure Preston can't touch it. Make sure no one can challenge it. I want it sealed, witnessed, ironclad. Samuel promised to handle it, to file the new will, to make Margaret's wishes legally unbreakable. Claire didn't ask what the will said, didn't want to know, because knowing would make it real, would make it about money instead of what it actually was. 2 women finding each other at the end of one life and the rebuilding of another. 2 women fighting the same enemy. People who saw them as means to an end instead of human beings worthy of dignity. That was worth more than any inheritance. At least that's what Claire told herself as she fell asleep in luxury she still couldn't process. She'd learned soon enough she was wrong. The story broke on page 6 3 days before the conservatorship hearing. Waitress con artist targets dying Manhattan real estate mogul. The photo showed Claire outside Mount Sinai, looking tired, disheveled, like exactly the kind of person who'd exploit a vulnerable elderly woman. Claire stared at her phone in the penthouse kitchen. Her hand shook. Her stomach turned. The article detailed everything. Her lost nursing career, her custody battle, her fired position at the Meridian Club. Every fact twisted into evidence of instability, of desperation, of someone willing to do anything for money. They interviewed your ex-husband. Samuel's voice came from behind her. He held his tablet, his expression grim. Robert gave them everything. Said you were manipulative, unstable, that he'd terminated parental rights to protect himself from your schemes. Claire's throat closed. Robert, who'd abandoned Nora rather than pay child support, who'd called their daughter a mistake, who'd disappeared the moment fatherhood required actual responsibility. Now, he was an expert witness on Claire's character. There's more. Samuel showed her the tablet. Another article. Different publication. Preston hired investigators. They found incidents from your nursing career. Claire read, felt the world tilt. The article described patient complaints, allegations of rough treatment, improper medication administration, things that had been investigated and dismissed years ago, things that had been proven false. But now they looked damning, looked like a pattern of someone who couldn't be trusted with vulnerable people. None of that was substantiated. Claire's voice came out raw. Every complaint was investigated. Every single one was dismissed or explained or... I know, but Preston's lawyers will argue where there's smoke, there's fire. They'll say you have a history of boundary violations with patients. That Margaret is just your latest victim. This is insane. I saved her life. I caught the medication tampering. And they'll say you manufactured that evidence, that you switched the medications yourself to create a crisis only you could solve, to make yourself indispensable. Samuel's voice stayed steady, professional, but Claire saw the worry in his eyes. It's brilliant, actually. Sociopathic, but brilliant. Margaret appeared in the doorway. She'd read the articles. Her face showed fury. We fight back. We sue for defamation. We can't. Samuel cut her off. Anything we do now looks defensive, makes the allegations seem credible. We need to wait for the hearing. Present our evidence. Let the judge decide. And if the judge believes Preston, Claire heard the panic in her own voice. Couldn't stop it. What happens then? Emergency conservatorship gets granted. Preston controls Margaret's medical care, finances, and living arrangements. He could remove you, isolate Margaret, control her treatment. He could let me die alone. Margaret's voice turned flat. That's what he wants. Me gone. The estate settled. His inheritance secured. Claire's phone rang. Unknown number. She answered without thinking. Ms. Bennett? This is Tracy Morrison with Child Protective Services. We need to schedule an emergency home visit regarding your daughter Nora Bennett. The room tilted. What? Why? We've received a report alleging neglect, unsuitable living conditions. We're required to investigate. Can you be available tomorrow at 10 a.m.? Yes, of course. And Ms. Bennett? Until our investigation concludes, we recommend limiting Nora's exposure to. Papers rustled. Margaret Ashford. The complainant expressed concerns about your daughter living with a terminally ill stranger. The call ended. Claire stood frozen. CPS. They called CPS. Preston had somehow found a way to weaponize Nora, to threaten the only thing Claire actually cared about. He can't do this. Claire's voice broke. He can't use my daughter against me. He absolutely can. Samuel's expression turned grim. And he will. Preston knows Margaret cares about you now. Cares about Nora. The fastest way to make you leave is to threaten your custody. Force you to choose between protecting Nora and protecting Margaret. Then I choose Nora. Claire's response came instantly. Automatically. I'll leave. I'll withdraw from the hearing. I'll do whatever. No. Margaret's voice cut like steel. That's exactly what he wants. You leave, I lose my strongest witness. I lose proof that I hired someone competent. I lose the medication tampering evidence. Preston wins, gets his conservatorship, and I spend my final months locked in some facility while he liquidates my assets. But Nora will be fine, because we're going to win. Margaret moved closer, took Claire's hands. I have survived 40 years in Manhattan real estate. I've fought mob bosses and corrupt politicians and men who thought being born wealthy made them smart. Preston is none of those things. He's a spoiled child who never learned that money doesn't buy character. He's also your son, biologically, but I stopped recognizing him as family the moment he tried to poison me. Margaret's grip tightened. You asked why I needed you. This is why. Because when everything falls apart, when the attacks come and the threats escalate and the easier path is to run, you stay. That's who you are. That's what nurses do. Stay when everyone else leaves. Claire wanted to believe her, wanted to think staying was noble instead of stupid. But she thought about Nora sleeping in the blue bedroom, about CPS showing up tomorrow, about losing custody of the only person she'd ever successfully protected. What if I can't do this? What if I'm not strong enough? Then we'll fail together. Margaret released Claire's hands. But I don't think you're going to fail. I think you're going to fight. The same way you fought those men in the restaurant. The same way you fought to rebuild after your career ended. The same way you fight every day to be the mother Nora deserves. Rosa appeared with Claire's old Meridian Club uniform. This came from the restaurant. Someone dropped it off, left it with the doorman. Claire took it, the black fabric she'd worn for 3 years. The uniform that smelled like kitchen grease and other people's food, and every indignity she'd swallowed to survive. A note was pinned to the collar. Thought you might want this back. We all know what really happened. Jamal. Claire's throat tightened. She unfolded the uniform, found another note, and another, and another. Every server at the Meridian Club had signed, had written messages. You saved her life. You're a hero. We got your back. You're not alone in this. Samuel pulled up something on his tablet. The restaurant security footage was leaked. Someone, I'm guessing Jamal, sent it to every news outlet in New York. It shows everything. Chad attacking Margaret. You protecting her. Management watching and doing nothing. He showed Claire the video. Watched her face as she saw herself on screen. Saw the way she'd moved. The way she'd positioned herself between danger and Margaret. The way she'd taken hit after hit and kept fighting. Social media is lighting up. Samuel scrolled through responses. People are angry. At the restaurant. At Chad Brennan. At Preston for attacking you. The narrative is shifting. Shifting isn't enough. We need proof. Real proof. Something that destroys Preston's credibility completely. Rosa moved to the window. Looked out at Central Park. I have journals. 30 years of working for Margaret. I documented everything. Every time Preston visited and demanded money. Every time he screamed at his mother for not giving him more. Every time her voice caught. Every time he made Margaret cry. That's hearsay. Personal observation, not evidence. But combined with everything else, Margaret's voice gained strength. Combined with the medication tampering and Claire's credentials and the restaurant footage, it becomes a pattern. Proof that Preston has spent years trying to control and exploit me. A plan formed. Fragile. Desperate. But possible. They'd go to the hearing. Present everything. The medications. The journals. The security footage. The witness testimony from Meridian Club staff. They'd build a case not just defending Margaret's competency, but exposing Preston's abuse. And if they won, if the judge sided with them, Preston would lose everything. Not just the conservatorship, but any claim to Margaret's estate, any relationship with his mother, any reputation he'd built. If they lost, Claire would lose Nora. Margaret would lose her freedom, and Preston would win. The stakes couldn't be higher. The risks couldn't be clearer. But Claire had made her choice, had stepped between danger and someone who needed protection. Couldn't step back now. She just hoped it would be enough. The CPS home visit lasted 90 minutes. Tracy Morrison, clipboard, professional smile, exhausted eyes, inspected every room. Asked questions about Nora's schooling, health care, emotional well-being. Interviewed Nora separately. Interviewed Margaret. Interviewed Rosa. Claire stood in the penthouse living room waiting for the verdict. Her heart hammered. Her palms sweated. Everything she'd built for 3 years balanced on this moment. Ms. Bennett. Tracy closed her folder. Your daughter is clearly well cared for. Healthy. Happy. This home provides resources most children never have access to. I see no evidence of neglect or unsuitable conditions. Claire's knees nearly gave out. So the complaint appears to be malicious, likely filed by someone with an agenda. Tracy's expression turned knowing. I've worked CPS for 15 years. I know when someone's weaponizing a system. This is that. What happens now? I file my report. Case gets closed. No further action. Tracy paused. Off the record? Your daughter talks about you like you hung the moon. Whatever you're doing, it's working. Don't let anyone tell you different. Tracy left. Claire sat on Margaret's sofa and cried. Relief, exhaustion, fear that still hadn't faded. Rosa brought tea, sat beside her, said nothing, just stayed. That night, Claire couldn't sleep. She wandered the penthouse, ended up in Margaret's office, found photo albums on a shelf, opened one, saw Caroline, young, smiling, full of life. Page after page of Margaret's daughter growing up, birthday parties, school plays, Christmas mornings. Then the photos changed. Caroline got older, thinner. Her eyes went distant. Her smile turned forced. The last photo showed Caroline at 25. She stood between Margaret and a teenage boy. They were at some charity gala, all three in expensive clothes, all three looking miserable. Claire studied the teenage boy, recognized him, Preston, before the expensive suits and entitlement hardened his features. He'd been young once, soft, human. What happened to turn him into someone who'd poison his own mother? I failed them both. Margaret's voice came from the doorway. She wore a silk robe, looked frail in the dim light. Caroline and Preston. I was so busy building the empire, I forgot to build a family. You can't blame yourself for Preston's choices. Can't I? Margaret moved into the office, sat beside Claire. I taught him that money mattered more than people, that success meant crushing anyone in your way, that love was weakness. He learned those lessons well. Caroline was different. Caroline felt everything. Too much. She tried to dull it with drugs. I tried to fix it with money. Rehab programs. Interventions. Tough love. Nothing worked. Margaret touched Caroline's photo. She died alone in a studio apartment I'd paid for. Dead for 2 days before anyone found her. The only family she had left me and Preston. We both failed her so completely she couldn't even call for help. Claire thought about her old Mount Sinai badge, the one she'd hidden in her locker. I kept my nursing badge, the one from before I got hurt. I don't know why. Maybe because throwing away felt like admitting I'd failed completely. You didn't fail. You were injured. I failed anyway. I could have fought harder for my job. Could have pushed through the pain. Could have. Claire stopped. Heard her own words. Recognized them. I sound like you. Blaming myself for things outside my control. We're quite a pair. Margaret managed a sad smile. 2 women convinced we're responsible for everything that breaks. Claire closed the photo album. You told Samuel to change your will, to leave everything to people who chose to care. Did you mean that? Every word. Preston will fight it. Even if we win the conservatorship hearing, he'll challenge the will, tie it up in court for years. Let him. Samuel designed it to be unbreakable. Preston will lose. Again. Margaret's voice turned hard. I won't let him profit from a lifetime of cruelty. What about forgiveness? He's still your son. Forgiveness doesn't mean letting someone hurt you repeatedly. It means releasing the pain they caused. I've forgiven Preston for being the son I created, for learning the wrong lessons from a mother too, focused on winning. But forgiveness doesn't obligate me to reward his abuse. Margaret looked at Claire. You understand that. You forgave Robert for abandoning Nora, but you didn't let him back into her life. Claire nodded. Understood. Some bridges burned so completely that rebuilding them would only create new dangers. Her phone buzzed. Text from Jamal. Hearing is tomorrow. Everyone from Meridian is coming to testify. Chef Marco. Maria from hosting, even Marcus. He's going to admit he prioritized wealthy customers over your safety. We got you. Another text. This one from Samuel. News outlets requesting interviews. Social media trending hashtag Justice for Claire. Preston's office is getting destroyed online. Momentum is shifting. A third text. Unknown number. You should run before you get hurt worse than the restaurant. This is your only warning. Claire showed Margaret the last text. Margaret's expression darkened. Preston getting desperate. Good. Desperate people make mistakes. They also do dangerous things. Claire thought about that. About the medication tampering. About the CPS call. About Preston's pattern of escalation. He's going to do something at the hearing. Something we're not expecting. Then we'll handle it. Margaret stood slowly, moved to her desk, unlocked a drawer, pulled out a thumb drive. My insurance policy. 30 years of business dealing, including multiple transactions where Preston used my company for money laundering. I've known for 5 years. I documented everything. Why didn't you report him? Because he's my son. Because I kept hoping he'd change. Because I'm a fool who loved him despite everything. Margaret handed Claire the thumb drive. But I'm done hoping. If he tries anything tomorrow, anything at all, Samuel releases this to the FBI. Preston goes to prison. I make sure of it. Claire held the thumb drive, felt its weight. The nuclear option. The final bridge burning. You'd really do that? Send your own son to prison? To protect you? To protect Nora? To stop him from destroying everything I built? Margaret's eyes stayed clear, certain, without hesitation. Margaret pulled another photo from her desk. Caroline at 23, laughing, holding a stray cat, looking exactly like Claire had looked in her nursing school photos. You remind me of Caroline before the addiction, before the pain, when she still believed in helping people, in making things better. That's the daughter I lost. That's the daughter I see when I look at you. I'm not her. I know, but you're someone else's daughter, someone's mother, someone worth protecting. That's more than enough. They sat in silence, two women on the eve of battle, both knowing tomorrow would change everything, both knowing someone would lose, both determined it wouldn't be them. Outside, Manhattan glittered. Endless lights, endless ambition, endless people fighting for survival in a city that ate the weak and barely noticed. But inside Margaret's penthouse, two women who'd learned to survive against impossible odds, prepared to prove that compassion wasn't weakness. It was the only thing strong enough to win. The Manhattan family court courtroom smelled like old wood and desperate prayers. Claire sat in the front row behind Samuel Chen's table. Her hands were folded in her lap to hide their shaking. Margaret sat beside her, thin, pale, but alert, sharp. Every medication cleared from her system. Every thought focused. Preston sat across the aisle with his lawyers. 3 of them. Expensive suits. Cold eyes. They'd come prepared to destroy. Judge Patricia Morrison entered. 60-something. Gray hair, pulled back severe. No-nonsense expression that made Claire's stomach clench. She'd seen hundreds of conservatorship cases. Knew every trick, every manipulation, every life families told to steal control. We're here for emergency conservatorship petition filed by Preston Ashford regarding his mother, Margaret Ashford. Judge Morrison's voice filled the courtroom. Mr. Chin, your client is contesting vigorously your honor. Samuel stood. Mrs. Ashford is of sound mind, capable of managing her own affairs. This petition is retaliation for her decision to change her estate planning in ways Mr. Preston Ashford disapproves of. Preston's lead attorney, Gerald Hartwell, partner at Manhattan's most aggressive firm, rose. Your Honor, Mrs. Ashford is terminally ill, on significant pain medication. She's made irrational decisions, including hiring a former waitress with a history of patient complaints to manage her medical care. We have evidence of her declining mental state. Then present it. Judge Morrison settled into her chair. I'm listening. The next hour felt like drowning. Hartwell called witnesses. A doctor who'd examined Margaret once, paid by Preston, testified about medication side effects, confusion, impaired judgment, memory loss. He called the financial advisor Margaret had fired 10 years ago. testified about Margaret's erratic business decisions, her emotional management style. He presented the Page 6 articles. The allegations about Claire made them sound factual instead of manufactured. Mrs. Ashford hired this woman, Claire Bennett, after knowing her for less than 8 hours, moved her into the penthouse, gave her access to all financial accounts, medical decisions, legal documents. Hartwell's voice dripped with false concern. This is classic elder abuse. A vulnerable woman being manipulated by someone who saw an opportunity. Claire's nails dug into her palms. Samuel would get his turn, would present their evidence, would destroy every lie. But sitting there listening to her life twisted into something ugly, it took everything not to scream. Your Honor, we'd like to call Claire Bennett to testify. Hartwell smiled. Predatory. Samuel stood. Objection. Ms. Bennett isn't a party to. Overruled. If she's central to the allegations, I want to hear from her. Judge Morrison looked at Claire. Ms. Bennett, please take the stand. Claire's legs barely held her. She walked to the witness stand, placed her hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth, sat in a chair that felt like an execution platform. Hartwell approached. Ms. Bennett, you were fired from the Meridian Club for workplace violence, correct? I was fired for protecting Margaret from assault. Yes. You've had multiple patient complaints during your nursing career, complaints that were investigated and dismissed. You lost custody proceedings with your ex-husband? I won custody. He terminated his parental rights. Because you were unstable? Because he was absent. Claire's voice stayed steady. Nurse voice. ER voice. The one that commanded respect. I won full custody because I was the only parent who showed up. Hartwell shifted tactics. How much is Mrs. Ashford paying you? $15,000 a week. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Hartwell's smile widened. That's nearly $800,000 a year. For what exactly? Companion care, medical advocacy, protection from her son's attempts to poison her. The courtroom erupted. Judge Morrison's gavel cracked like thunder. Order. Poison. Hartwell's voice turned mocking. That's a serious accusation. It's a documented fact. Samuel stood, held up evidence bags. These are the medications delivered to Mrs. Ashford by Preston Ashford's personal assistant. Triple-strength morphine, designed to sedate, to create the exact symptoms of confusion and impaired judgment. Mr. Hartwell is claiming prove Mrs. Ashford's incompetence. He handed the bags to the judge, presented pharmaceutical records, Claire's nursing credentials, her written assessment of the medication error or intentional overdose. Ms. Bennett recognized the tampering, corrected the dosage, saved Mrs. Ashford's life. Samuel's voice cut through the courtroom. This is why she was hired, because she has the medical expertise to protect a vulnerable cancer patient from family members more interested in inheritance than well-being. Preston's face went red. He whispered urgently to Hartwell. Hartwell whispered back. They were panicking. Judge Morrison studied the evidence. These medications were delivered by your assistant, Mr. Ashford. A pharmacy error, Your Honor. Nothing more. A pharmacy error that happened to produce exactly the symptoms you're using to justify this conservatorship. The judge's voice turned ice. Convenient. The courtroom doors opened. Margaret stood. She'd been sitting in the back, waiting for her moment. Now she walked forward slowly. Every eye tracked her movement. She looked fragile, dying, but her spine stayed straight. Her eyes stayed clear. Your Honor, may I speak? Mrs. Ashford, you don't have to. I want to. Margaret reached the front. Face the judge. I'm dying. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. I have months left. Maybe weeks. I accepted that diagnosis 6 months ago. Her voice filled the courtroom, strong despite her body's weakness. What I haven't accepted is spending my final days under the control of a son who spent 40 years seeing me as a bank account. Preston hasn't visited me voluntarily in 5 years. Every interaction has been about money, about access, about what he'll inherit. She turned to Preston. I failed you as a mother. I know that. I chose work over family. I taught you that people were assets to exploit instead of human beings to love. That's my fault, my failure, and I'm sorry. Preston's expression flickered. something vulnerable underneath the anger. But I won't reward cruelty with my estate. I won't let you institutionalize me, drug me, isolate me from the one person in 40 years who protected me without asking what she'd gain. Margaret looked at Claire. She saved my life. Not for money. For the same reason she became a nurse. Because you can't watch people suffer without helping. Samuel stepped forward. Your Honor, Mrs. Ashford recently updated her will with my firm. I have it here, sealed, witnessed, executed, while Mrs. Ashford was demonstrably competent. He handed the document to the judge. Judge Morrison opened it. Read. Her eyebrows rose. Mrs. Ashford has named Claire Bennett and her daughter Nora Bennett as primary beneficiaries of her estate, valued at $840 million. Preston Ashford receives $1 million and no further claim. The courtroom exploded. Preston lunged from a seat. That's insane. She's not family. You can't. I can. Margaret's voice cut through chaos. It's my estate, my money, my choice. And I choose the woman who asked for nothing but gave everything. Samuel wasn't finished. He called witnesses. Jamal from the Meridian Club testified about the assault, about management's failure to protect Claire, about her selfless defense of Margaret. Chef Marco testified. Maria from hosting. Even Marcus, shamefaced guilty, admitted he'd prioritized wealthy customers over employee safety. Rosa took the stand, presented 30 years of journals. Every incident of Preston's verbal abuse, financial manipulation, absence when Margaret needed family. Her voice shook with controlled rage as she read entry after entry proving Preston's pattern of exploitation. He made her cry every time he visited, every single time. Demanded money, demanded control. Never once asked how she felt. Never once treated her like a human being. Rosa looked at Preston. You broke her heart for 40 years. Now you want to steal her final months. Samuel presented financial records, evidence that Preston had embezzled from Margaret's company 5 years ago. Small amounts, untraceable unless you knew where to look. Margaret had known, had documented everything, had given him chance after chance to change. He never did. Your Honor, we've also been contacted by the FBI. Samuel's voice turned grave. Special Agent Morrison, no relation, is investigating attempted elder abuse and pharmaceutical tampering. They'd like to interview Preston Ashford regarding the medication incident. Preston's lawyers huddled, whispered urgently. This had gone beyond civil court. This was criminal territory now. Judge Morrison reviewed every document, every piece of evidence. The courtroom sat in thick silence. Claire's heart hammered. This was it. The moment everything changed. I've seen a lot of conservatorship cases. Judge Morrison's voice finally broke the silence. Most involved genuine concern for aging family members. This isn't one of those cases. She looked at Preston. Mr. Ashford, your petition is denied. Your mother is clearly competent, lucid, capable of making her own decisions. The evidence suggests your concern isn't her welfare, but your inheritance. Preston's face went white. Your Honor, I'm not finished. The judge's voice turned hard. I'm also issuing a restraining order. You're prohibited from contacting Margaret Ashford directly. All communication goes through her attorney. If you violate this order, you'll be arrested. She turned to Claire and Margaret. Mrs. Ashford, you're free to manage your own affairs. Live where you choose, with whom you choose. Your medical decisions remain yours alone. Relief crashed through Claire like a physical wave. Margaret's hand found hers. Squeezed. They'd won. Judge Morrison wasn't finished. And, Mr. Ashford, the court is referring this case to law enforcement. The medication tampering allegations are serious. I suggest you retain criminal counsel. 2 uniformed officers approached Preston. He stood, backed away. This is ridiculous. You're not under arrest. The lead officer's voice stayed professional. But the FBI would like you to come in for questioning, voluntarily. The word voluntarily hung in the air. Everyone knew what it meant. Come now, or be arrested later. Preston left surrounded by lawyers and officers. He looked back once, at Margaret. His expression showed something Claire couldn't read. Rage? Regret? Recognition that he destroyed the last relationship that mattered? Then he was gone. Margaret turned to Claire in the emptying courtroom. Thank you for staying, for fighting, for being the daughter who chose me back when my own son couldn't. Claire's throat tightened. You're not my mother. I know. Margaret smiled, sad but real. But maybe we can be family anyway. Not by blood, by choice. And somehow, in that moment, Claire understood. Family wasn't who raised you, or shared your DNA. Family was who stayed when leaving was easier, who fought when giving up made sense, who saw you at your worst and chose you anyway. If you've been moved by this story of courage and chosen family, please subscribe. Like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear that dignity is worth fighting for. Your support keeps these stories alive. 6 months later, Claire stood in Margaret's office, now her office, and still couldn't quite believe it was real. The Ashford Foundation for Displaced Healthcare Workers occupied 3 floors of a midtown building Margaret owned. Claire managed it all. 47 employees, 215 healthcare workers, helped last quarter alone, each one with a story like hers, each one rebuilding from trauma or injury or circumstances beyond their control. Margaret had lived longer than doctors predicted. The experimental treatment Claire researched, found through nursing journals and clinical trial databases, had bought them time. Not a cure, never a cure, but months instead of weeks. Quality of life instead of suffering. She still lived in the Fifth Avenue penthouse, still fought cancer every day, but she did it surrounded by people who loved her. Not people who wanted her money or her properties or her legacy. People who wanted her. Claire walked to the window, looked out at Manhattan, thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago, serving tables, swallowing insults, believing survival was the best she could hope for. Now she managed an $800 million estate, lived in a penthouse, sent Nora to the best private school in Manhattan. Her daughter thrived, made friends, laughed without the weight of poverty crushing every moment. But the best part, the part that mattered most, wasn't the money. It was the purpose. Claire was a nurse again, not in an ER, not in scrubs, but helping people who'd been broken by a system that valued profit over humanity, helping them find their way back. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Ms. Bennett, your 2 o'clock is here. Claire turned. A young woman stood in the doorway, 26, nervous. She wore thrift store clothes and carried a worn purse. Her eyes held the same desperation Claire remembered from 3 years ago. Come in. Please sit. Claire gestured to the chair across from her desk. Tell me your story. The woman, Jennifer Martinez, had been or nurse. 5 years. Excellent record. Then a doctor made a mistake during surgery. Blamed Jennifer to save his career. She'd been fired, license suspended, blacklisted from every hospital in the city. Claire listened, heard herself in every word, saw herself in every tremor of Jennifer's hands. I just want to work again. Jennifer's voice broke. I'm good at what I do. I save lives, but nobody will give me a chance. I will. Claire pulled out foundation paperwork. We cover legal fees to fight wrongful termination. We provide living expenses during the appeal process. We connect you with hospitals that value competence over politics. And we don't stop until you're working again. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. Why? You don't know me. Because someone gave me a chance when I was exactly where you are. And dignity isn't given, Jennifer. It's claimed. But sometimes we need help claiming it. Claire smiled. Let me help you. After Jennifer left, hopeful, grateful, transformed, Claire returned to the penthouse, found Margaret in her usual spot, the window seat overlooking Central Park. She held a letter. Her hands shook. What is it? Claire sat beside her. Caroline's former roommate, from 20 years ago. Margaret's voice came out strange. She says there's something about Caroline's death I need to know. Something she's kept secret for 2 decades. What does she say? She wants to meet, to tell me in person. Margaret looked at Claire. I don't know if I can handle more truth, more guilt, more evidence of my failures. You don't have to handle it alone. Claire took Margaret's hand. Whatever it is, we face it together. Margaret nodded, squeezed Claire's hand. They sat together watching the sun set over Manhattan. 2 women who'd survived everything life threw at them. who'd found family in the wreckage, who'd learned that love wasn't about blood or obligation. It was about showing up, staying present, choosing each other every day. Later that evening, Claire retrieved her old Meridian Club uniform from storage, the black fabric she'd worn for 3 years of invisible labor. She placed it in a frame, hung it on the wall beside Margaret's first property deed from 1985. 2 women, 2 journeys, 2 proofs that survival wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning. Nora appeared in the doorway. "Mama, Margaret's teaching me chess. Want to play?" Claire looked at her daughter, happy, secure, thriving in ways she'd never imagined possible. "I'll be right there, baby." She took one last look at the framed uniform, at the woman she'd been, at the woman she'd become, at the proof that courage wasn't about being fearless. It was about being terrified and fighting anyway, about stepping between danger and someone who needed protection, about staying when leaving was easier, about claiming dignity in a world designed to strip away. That was the story Claire wanted to tell, the story she lived, the story that proved everyday people could do extraordinary things when someone finally believed in them. Thank you for watching this story of courage, dignity, and the families we choose. If it moved you, subscribe now. Hit the bell icon. Share it with someone who needs to remember that their worth isn't measured by their paycheck or their title. We all deserve to be seen, to be valued, to be fought for. Your support means we can keep telling these stories. Stories that prove we're all worth saving. Until next time.